In the golden age of Rome, entertainment wasn't just a pastime. It was a ritual, and no one understood that better than Nero Claudius Caesar, Rome's most infamous emperor, to the world. Nero was a poet, a patron of the arts, a man of music and culture. But behind the veil of performance, he was something else entirely, a collector of screams, a devotee of death, a god in human skin who believed that blood could cleanse his sins. And to feed that hunger, he turned to the gladiators, not just as warriors, not just as sport, but as sacrifices, not for the gods, not even for Rome, for himself. This is the story of Rome's bloodiest ritual, a forgotten ceremony where men were made offerings, where screams became symphonies, and where one emperor stood not as ruler, but as high priest of murder. Rome's bloodiest ritual, how gladiators were sacrificed for Nero's pleasure. The legends of Nero are infamous. He supposedly played the lyre as the city burned. He married his male lover in public twice. He executed his mother, and he surrounded himself with yes-men, mystics, and torturers. But there's one part of his reign that's less talked about. The blood rite of the arena, a private ritual conducted after hours in secret, not for the people, not for the gods, only for Nero and his chosen few. The Colosseum hadn't been built yet, but Nero had access to the grand amphitheater of Statilius Taurus, the largest in Rome at the time, on certain moonless nights. The gates would open after dusk, but no crowds were invited. Instead, dozens of slaves, gladiators, and condemned men were brought in bound, drugged, and blindfolded, and what followed was not combat. There was no roaring crowd, and no referee, and no mercy. One Roman historian wrote, he called it a libation of strength. He drank wine with their blood. He thought it gave him the voice of Mars. This wasn't combat, it was butchery and order. Nero would sit on a throne carved with ivory skulls, wearing a robe of white and gold, painted with blood from the last offering. One by one, the gladiators were brought before him, and one by one, they were killed by order, not chance. The ritual began with a goat being led onto the sand, it was not symbolic. The goat was slaughtered before Nero, as he whispered incantations from a scroll believed to be Etruscan in origin. Then a whip was brought out braided with gold thread and human hair. The first gladiator was struck once, then twice, and on the third lash. The execution began, always in the same place, always by Nero's signal, and always in silence. Only 11 men were ever permitted to attend these rituals. Each was bound by an oath never to speak of what they saw. But one man broke his silence, Lucius Annius, a former court physician. His account, smuggled out before his execution, revealed chilling details. He made them sing before they died. He said it sweetened the soul, and when one refused, Nero ate a piece of his liver. Some historians doubt the account. Others say it matches too much. Most gladiators were criminals, prisoners of war or slaves, but Nero didn't pick them for skill or crime. He picked them for how they looked. He once selected a boy of 15 because he reminded him of Apollo, another because he had a stutter Nero found musical. These weren't executions. They were sacrifices, deliberate, theatrical, designed to feed something Nero believed lived inside him. He wasn't killing for justice. He wasn't killing for Rome. He was killing for a god, and the god was himself. The arena was only the beginning. Nero didn't just watch the dead die. He brought their memory to the table. He consumed them, literally. This wasn't a banquet, it was a sacrament. Beneath Nero's palace, the Domus Aurea, or Golden House, lay a hidden dining chamber, sealed after his death, rediscovered only in the 20th century, archaeologists found. Blood grooves carved into the floor, hooks embedded in the marble walls. A mosaic depicting gladiators torn apart by lions and eagles. but all with Nero's face on the animals. The room had no windows, only drains. For what? Excess, ritual, consumption. After a midnight arena ritual, Nero would retreat to this hidden chamber, awaiting him. His 11 chosen guests, known only as the spectators mudos or silent watchers, on long marble tables. Gladiator remains were arranged like sculpture, eyes still open, limbs bent into poses. Plates of exotic food surrounded them: roasted peacock, honey dormice, and sometimes organ meat from the executed. He called it the Feast of Strength, a banquet where each guest was required to eat something taken from the fallen. Those who refused were added to the menu. To hide the stench of gore, slaves were made to burn imported Syrian incense and anoint the room with rose oil, but no amount of perfume could mask what was happening. Blood congealed between bread, eyes plucked as delicacies, wine mixed with marrow. One note from a frightened servant read, "He said the screams made the grapes sweeter. I tried not to listen." Every banquet began with music, but not from musicians, from the dying. Nero ordered his victims, those not yet killed, to be trained to sing in chorus before being sacrificed, sometimes gagged and ungagged to control pitch, sometimes beaten for harmony. He called them cantors, crucis, singers of the cross. A marble plaque found near the chamber had this inscription: "Let the final breath be music to the gods." Nero believed he had divine vocal power. He performed operas written about himself. He made senators clap until their hands bled, but when the gladiators sang, he said, "Their voices make me immortal." Some accounts suggest he recorded their death songs on scrolls, marking each with a name and final scream pitch. One scroll recovered centuries later ends with, "Eutychus tenor gurgling beautiful. I wept." To Nero, this wasn't madness. A tea was divine ritual, a rebirth through sacrifice. Every bite, every scream, every act of consumption was designed to please the god inside him. He believed each gladiator fed him more than food. They give me their courage, their rebellion, their pain, their voice, and he drank it in. Like wine. One of Nero's silent watchers survived. His name was Rufus Claudius Sabinus, a nobleman who escaped Rome during a border inspection. He fled to Egypt and dictated a testimony that was recovered centuries later in the library. She was called Lamia. No last name. No known family. No crime. But Nero saw her once passing in a slave market and declared, "She has the eyes of the moon. Let her bleed for the stars." Women in the arena were rare. They were a novelty, a spectacle, used for humor, humiliation, or horror. But Lamia was different. She was trained for 3 years, fed, housed, clothed in silks, not as a warrior, but as a vessel. For what? The finale. She was 15 when they put her in the cage with the lion. But this wasn't a battle. The lion had been starved for days. Nero had its teeth plated with gold, and he had instructed his priest to dress Lamia in a white gown stitched with human teeth taken from previous gladiators. As the crowd gathered, they thought they were about to watch a devouring. They were wrong. In the arena's center, 7 bronze mirrors were arranged in a perfect circle, each angled to reflect Lamia from every direction. In Roman superstition, mirrors were not only for reflection, but duplication of soul. Nero had been advised by an Egyptian mystic. If she is seen from all sides, her soul may divide, and if the beast doesn't touch her, she is divine. So the lion was released, and Lamia stood still. The lion approached her, circling, sniffing, growling. But it never attacked. A tea lay down beside her, and according to every written witness, it began to purr. Nero rose from his throne. He stepped down into the sand, and with a voice choked with emotion, he declared, "She is the mirror, she is the voice, she shall sing into the bone of the earth." And then he slit her throat himself. There was no applause. And no laughter. And no cheers. only the sound of blood spattering on mirror glass, and then the mirrors began to crack, each one splintering from the inside out. Without touch, witnesses claimed they heard screams coming from the reflections. One guard gouged out his eyes, another collapsed and bled from the ears. Nero, he laughed and licked the blade. Later, in the private feast that followed, Nero made his guests recite a chant written in Etruscan glyphs. The only surviving line, translated centuries later, reads, "She sings through the lion's mouth. She returns every spring. The throat must be clean after the chant." A voice echoed in the room, female, unknown, It whispered one name. Lamia. Nero kept one of Lamia's eyes, preserved in honey, displayed in his personal shrine next to his mother's ashes and a pair of child's shoes he claimed once belonged to the god Mercury. Visitors to the room reported feeling watched, even in pitch darkness. One poet said, "That I held all the screams of the dead, It knew who would die next, It saw Rome bleed." After Lamia's death, Nero created a secret festival, held every spring equinox. One girl was chosen from among the palace slaves. She was dressed in white, her hands painted gold, and she was placed in the arena with a mirror and a cage. Only the emperor and his 11 watched. The records are few, but the pattern is clear. No girl survived more than 3 days after being chosen, and none were buried. It wasn't about the lion or the mirrors, or even the girl. It was about control over reflection, over voice, over the soul itself. Nero believed that by cutting a throat under 7 mirrors, he could echo forever, and that one voice, hers, would haunt the Tiber, until someone gave her a new mouth. Not all performances in Nero's Rome were for the public. Some were never meant to be seen. Some were meant only for the dead. Buried beneath the Domus Aurea was a private theater, not stone, not wood, but bone, walls reinforced with gladiator spines, benches made from thigh bones and hip joints, and in the center a stage built from stacked skulls, polished and white. He called it the Ossium Theatrum, the theater of skulls. Music was everything to Nero, but not just sound symbolism. He commissioned his artisans to craft instruments from the bodies of those he executed, drums made of stretched human skin, flutes hollowed from femurs, lutes strung with vocal cords. Every instrument was named after its donor. One was called Eutychus, another Valeria, a third simply the Screamer. These weren't just decorations. They were played by slaves by priests, and once by Nero himself. Once a month, Nero held private plays here, never more than a dozen attendees. He wrote the scripts, he played the lead, and the rest of the cast were the dead, skinned faces stretched onto masks, stuffed tunics filled with ribs and sand. The stage reeked of rot and oil. He called it a mass of voices. He believed that through drama, he could resurrect the soul, even if only for one night. At the climax of each performance, Nero demanded one fresh soul, a slave, a condemned prisoner, a stolen child. It didn't matter. They would be brought forward, dressed in white, and forced to sing one line from the script. "I give voice, and I give bone." Then, before the crowd, they were bled into a trough beneath the stage. Their blood fed a system of tubes built into the skull floor, causing it to appear as though the skulls themselves were weeping. Nero called this moment the gift. Others called it the curtain of death. To maintain the theater, Nero employed a special order of priests. They were neither clergy nor servants, but something far stranger. They wore robes made of tanned scalps, stitched with teeth and fingers. They wore masks fashioned from the faces of those who had died on stage. Their job? To keep the actors in place. To clean the blood from the bones. To chant during the rituals, and most disturbingly, to bury the audience if Nero deemed the play imperfect. At the center of the theater was a throne Nero's carved from ivory and ash, inlaid with dozens of human eyes preserved in wax. He believed the eyes could see the afterlife. He would ask them questions during performances. Sometimes he laughed, sometimes he cried, sometimes he screamed. One guest record states, "He demanded silence and began speaking in voices not his own. The eyes rolled, the throne creaked as if under breath. We fled. The theater of skulls burned the night. Nero died. Some say his enemies torched it in vengeance. Others say he did it himself to prevent the voices from following him. But several skulls were rescued from the ashes, one bow." Among Nero's many obsessions, none disturbed his court more than his belief in child oracles, he said. Only those untouched by sin can hear the voice of the divine, and only they can speak it. It began with infants. Literally, he had cradles placed in the temple of Vesta, surrounded by burning incense and chanting priests. Slaves recorded the first sound the infants made, not cries, but babble, if a baby uttered something that resembled Latin or Greek. It was taken as prophecy, but most infants died quickly, their lungs scorched, their eyes burned from the smoke, their mothers silenced forever, and yet Nero called the practice a purification of the tongue. At age 5, a lion was brought from Thrace, a slave boy, mute. He never spoke until Nero took him into the chamber of mirrors. For 5 days, no food, no water, just reflection and music. On the 6th day, a lion began to sing, not words, but names. Names of senators, names of soldiers, names of the dead, and then names of those who hadn't died yet. A lion was kept alive in a golden crib beneath the Domus Aurea. Every evening, Nero lit 40 oil lamps and asked him the same question: who will die next? A lion answered, and his answers were always correct. Sometimes he'd whisper a name, and the next day, that person was found drowned, stabbed, or worse, missing their tongue, replaced by a silver coin. Nero believed the boy had a direct line to the underworld. He began calling him, "My Sibyl, my little gate." One evening, during a lavish feast, Nero brought a lion into the hall and demanded a prophecy in front of his guests. The boy stood. He looked directly at Nero, and he said clear, perfect Latin, "The fire shall consume your name, and your throat shall birth the sword that kills you." The room went silent. Nero laughed at first, then he struck the boy, then he screamed, then he ordered a lion's tongue removed. A lion was chained in a cell below the arena. His tongue, wrapped in silk, was placed in Nero's private reliquary next to Lamia's eye, but the boy did not die. He continued to hum. Guards reported hearing dozens of voices in the cell, all speaking at once. In different tongues, the floor cracked beneath him, and after 7 days, the cell collapsed. They never found his body, only a single oil lamp still burning. After a lion vanished, Nero declared a new rite, the Festival of the Crimson Child. Each year, one boy under 10 would be selected, dressed in red silk, and paraded through the forum. At the peak of the ritual, he would be led to a raised platform, crowned with gold, and asked, "What does Rome deserve?" If the boy answered incorrectly, his throat was cut. If he answered correctly, he was strangled instead. Some believe Nero was mad. Others believe he was a man who encountered something far older than himself. Something that spoke through children. Something that demanded not belief, but obedience. One Roman priest later wrote, "I heard the boy's voice after he was gone. It came from the mirrors. It told me, he is only the mouth. The true voice is still coming." The child oracle was not a prophet. He was a warning that Rome was being spoken to, that Nero had become more than emperor. He had become a conduit, and the voice that spoke through him still sings. On a night with no moon, Nero made the Colosseum into a lake of death. No cheers. No horns, just water and blood. Historians rarely agree on Nero's most deranged act, but all mention the Red Nautica. Using an intricate system of aqueducts and trapdoors, Nero had the Colosseum flooded, not for spectacle, not for games, but for execution. That night, 200 slaves were marched into the center of the arena on narrow wooden rafts. Men, women, even children, all chained at the neck, all barefoot, mouths sewn shut. The crowd had been ordered not to speak. Anyone who made a sound was dragged from their seat and added to the raft chain. As the rafts floated into place, blood began rising from beneath the water. Not metaphor, literal. Nero had ordered the aqueducts laced with fresh blood from the execution pits. The water turned from silver to crimson. Witnesses said it steamed warm and iron sweet. The crowd did not cheer. They did not move. They sat frozen, as if Rome itself was holding its breath. And then, the first scream ... It came from below. One of the chained prisoners was pulled under fast. Without splash, another, then another. Chains snapped, water boiled, and from the center of the blood lake, something rose, a massive black snake, carved of ivory, moved by hundreds of hidden slaves beneath the floor ... It opened its mouth, and from within spilled fire. The water ignited, not the surface, but what floated on it. Nero had added oil, perfumed and thick, to create floating rings of fire. The result: a living sea of flame, red, crackling, choking. Dozens drowned, dozens burned, none escaped, and all the while, Nero played the cithara and sang, "O river, be my blade, O blood, be my light." At the end of the ritual, when the water had cooled and the flames died, only one figure remained, floating atop a shattered raft, clutching a child's skull. His name? Unknown, but he'd been one of Nero's own champions, a man undefeated in 47 fights. Nero walked down into the arena and offered him freedom. The man didn't respond. He simply raised the skull and said, "This is the god you've made." Then he bit off his own tongue and drowned. Hours later, the sun failed to rise. A thick black eclipse darkened the Roman sky. Birds dropped dead mid-flight. Dogs howled. Pregnant women miscarried in the streets. Nero claimed credit. He shouted from the palace steps, "Rome has entered my night, and it shall never see dawn without my command." Later, archaeologists would discover a plaque made of human vertebrae. Etched in Greek, it read, "He fed the river, he lit the sea, he sang to the stars." And they answered "it is now stored in the Vatican archives, never displayed. Some say it hums when near mirrors. Some say it still smells like smoke. This was not a performance ... It was a sacrifice. Rome had always killed for power, but Nero, he killed for sound, for vision, for echo. And on that night, the arena didn't entertain ... It devoured. If you follow the deepest corridors beneath Nero's golden palace, past the ossuaries, past the tombs, past the flooded chambers, you'll reach the vault of the Hollow One, a place where faces were forbidden. Nero was a man of extreme vanity. His image adorned coins, statues, paintings, even bread loaves, but late in his reign. That changed. He ordered hundreds of statues of himself destroyed. He refused to be painted. He smashed every mirror in the palace, and when asked why, he whispered, "He sees me through them. He has no face, so he steals mine." Found hidden in a leather sack behind Nero's private altar was a strange codex, a book made of stitched human skin. On each page, a single face had been tattooed, mouths open, eyes hollow, but on the final page, no face at all, just an empty oval beneath it, written in flaking blood. "The one who has no mouth is the one who speaks loudest." Nero called it the man with no face. Others called him the listener, the whispering lord, the mask behind all things. To honor this faceless entity, Nero began a new spectacle, the Faceless Games. Prisoners and slaves were brought into a dark chamber, one by one. They were blinded, gagged, and had their faces smeared with ash. A masked priest would then ask, "Will you give your face to the one who has none?" Those who said yes had their faces flayed, dried, and offered on a stone altar. Those who said no were thrown into a pit filled with mirrors until they tore out their own eyes. In the lowest vault was an idol 7 feet tall, carved of obsidian. Its body was human. Its arms were crossed, but its head was smooth, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a perfectly blank surface. Witnesses claimed it shifted when watched. Some said it breathed. One priest wrote, "When I was alone with the idol, I heard my name spoken from inside my skull." Nero visited it nightly. He would stand for hours face to non-face. Once a month, Nero would perform the mirror rite. He would sit in a ring of mirrors turned inward, facing the obsidian idol, naked, silent, bleeding from the eyes. Then, he would recite the names of the dead, not from memory, but from voices he claimed whispered through the glass. On the 13th recitation, one mirror would crack, always the same one inside it. For a second, they say a faceless figure would appear, walking away. The final public sign of Nero's obsession came during his last games. A voice not from the arena, not from any person, was heard by the entire crowd, deep, genderless, unmistakable. It said, "The face you gave me is not yours to take back." Nero collapsed. He soiled himself. He did not return to the palace for 3 days. When he did, he ordered his own face removed from every Roman coin. The vault of the Hollow One was sealed after Nero's death, or so they say. But in 1932, workers digging near the Palatine Hill vanished inside an old tunnel, and the site was sealed again. No bodies were found, only a faceless marble head, still wet with condensation. In a statue, just ahead and beneath it, a single line carved into the stone in Latin. I listened still. He was a man who wanted to be worshipped, but in the end, Nero began worshipping something faceless, not a god of glory or war or music, but a god of absence, of erased identity, of silence made flesh. And when Nero died, they say he had no face left at all. Rome is a city of ruins, but beneath those ruins are more ruins, and below even that, the remnants of rituals so violent, so precise, so unholy, they were erased from memory on purpose. In 2006, workers restoring a drainage system beneath the Colosseum uncovered a sealed chamber. Inside, 36 rusted blades, human teeth arranged in a circle, and a child's mask made of bronze and ash. All were catalogued and stored away. The room was resealed, and when asked why, a Vatican official simply said, "Because it was never meant to be found." In the Domus Aurea, the remains of Nero's golden palace, there are corridors still off limits to the public. One such tunnel, known to workers as the pipe room, has walls that constantly weep red. Tests confirm it's not paint, not mineral, not even blood. Something older. Scientists say it's unidentifiable. Locals say it screams when it rains. Deep within the Vatican's private reliquary sits an object simply labeled idol provenance unknown (it) is faceless, smooth as glass, 7 feet tall. It was found in a collapsed tunnel below the Palatine Hill in 1897. Since then, 3 archivists assigned to it have vanished. The only recorded note: the statue moves only when no one is watching. In a locked wing of the Capitoline Museum, researchers uncovered a stack of small handheld mirrors, all Roman era, each one perfectly polished, untarnished, and each one reflects something. Wrong, not the viewer, not the room, but a face that isn't there. Every attempt to photograph the reflection fails, one assistant wrote. The mirror didn't show my face ... It showed the back of my head. Something was behind me. And finally, there is the sound, once a year. On June 9th, the anniversary of Nero's death, visitors near the Colosseum report music, not from street performers, but from underneath, a single-stringed instrument. Notes trembling, accompanied by what sounds like a child singing. But no one can find the source, and if you listen closely, the melody ends with the scream of a crowd. History remembers Nero as a madman, a tyrant, a failed artist. But what if the truth is more terrifying? What if he was possessed? What if he was the first man to listen? And Rome didn't fall because it was weak, but because something inside it demanded to be fed. They say all roads lead to Rome, but some lead under it, into the dark, into the forgotten, where the faceless wait, where mirrors still hum, where blood runs like water, and the screams of gladiators echo into eternity. The city was built on death, but under Nero. It worshipped it, and if you ever visit, if you ever feel the air grow cold, or catch the sound of music where there should be none, don't look in the mirror. You might not like who's looking back.